All right, this is day 8 of the distance learning packet. We have an expressions and equations task, and we are comparing speeds. So looking at the graph, we have distance on the y in meters and time in seconds on the x. So our speed would be in meters per second. And it tells us that these are 2 cars and they're traveling along the freeway. All right, and this is a metric system of, otherwise we would have miles per hour. So this is in meters per second. And then the question is, which equation from these choices below is the best choice for describing the distance traveled by car B after X seconds? Okay, we have no numbers on the graph, but we do have some information about car A, and that's in the first description. So car A is going 30 meters per second. So 30 meters per second is our slope. So the slope is 30. So car B is going slower, and looking at the line, we see that the slope is less. So whatever we choose has to be less than 30. So let's look at our choices here. Okay, so remember, y equals mx plus b. B is 0, so we don't have that. So m is our slope. Okay, so the equation for car A would be y equals 30x. So we want something less than 30. So equals some number here, but it has to be less than 30. Okay, because it's going slower. So 85 is out, 60 is out, 30 is exactly car A. So car B, the only one that makes sense, must be equation D, or y equals 15x. Okay, so that would be here, 15. So it's going half the speed. So just like we did before, if we were to just choose a point and draw a line, a vertical line, and we could compare the distance traveled in that same amount of time. And our line's not perfect, but this distance is about half of this total distance. Okay, and my lines are not perfect, but yeah, it makes sense. Okay, so D is our only reasonable choice. So that's it for this one. Okay, next we have a rule of 4, and we have a graph this time. So now we have to find the slope from a graph, the y-intercept from a graph, and then come up with some sort of equation. Okay, so I'm going to do slope first. And for slope, we need 2 points on the graph. So any 2 points that we know exactly what the numbers are. So here's one. It crosses perfectly on the grids. We follow the line. Looks like here's another one. Okay, so we have our rise and our run for our slope. Rise over run. Okay, so m is rise over run. Okay, so let's count. So we go from 2 to 5, so that's 3, up 3, positive 3, over from 1 to 5, so that's over 4. So that's 3 over 4, 3 over 4. So that's our slope. Okay, so the y-intercept, following the line to the y-axis, it crosses not exactly at 1. Looks like maybe 1 and not quite a half. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So this would be a half. So this looks like 1/4. If we split that up into 4 sections. And of course, this is going to depend on how it looks on your paper after it's been printed. But to me, it looks like 1 and 1/4. So 1 and 1/4. But remember, we can't use a mixed number in an equation. So let's convert this to a fraction. Okay, so this would be it's just by counting 4. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fourths. Okay, so 5 fourths. All right, so here's my equation. So again, y equals mx plus b. M is 3 over 4, so 3 fourths. And then x, then plus 5 over 4. So that's our equation. All right, so let's just test to see if our y-intercept was correct. So we kind of just guessed, based off of what we saw in the graph. So how could we test this? How could we check to make sure it's right? Well, we could just choose one of these points. So this is 1, 2 that we know for sure. We can't choose these points because, again, we're going to have to guess. And we can make a mistake if we try to guess. So I'm going to try that. So I'm going to check my work. So this says when x is 1, then y equals 2. So just substitute those numbers in. So 2 for y, and then 3 fourths. And then instead of x, I'm going to put a 1. And then everything else stays the same. Okay? So 2 just gets dropped down. 3 fourths times 1 is just 3 fourths. So now we're just adding these fractions. We have a common denominator. Numerator is 3 plus 5. Okay, so what is 3 plus 5? Okay, that's 8. So we have 2 equals 8 over 4. Is that the same as 2? Or is this actually equal? Yes, it is. 8 over 4 is 2. So our equation is correct. All right, for the table, I'm not going to do the whole thing for you, but I will help you to get started. So when we have fractions, you can choose any numbers for x, but it's going to make your life much easier if we choose numbers that are kind of compatible with these fractions. So we already did the 1, and we already know that answer, right? Here's our, let's do 1, and we already know that y is 2. That's this point right here. Okay, we also have 5, 5. Because that's from the graph. Okay. And if we had any more from the graph that we could see specifically, then we could put those down. So we would need at least, I prefer 3 points if we can. So let me think of another point that would be good. So I'm going to, whatever I choose for x, I'm going to have to multiply it by 3 over 4. So if I choose 4, and I try to multiply 3 over 4 times 4, then these cancel and I just get 3. So that could work. However, when we add 3 to 5 over 4, we still get a fraction. I'm going to try to avoid fractions. So what if we just look at our slope? Right, we know these two numbers are on the line. Okay, so let's see if we can just keep using the same pattern to get more points. And of course, they're not going to be on the graph, but it doesn't say to make a table using points only from the graph. So if I keep using the same pattern, we just keep adding 4. So 5 plus 4 is 9. Over on the y side, 5 plus 3 is 8. And then we could keep going. 13, 11, and so on. You could graph this in Desmos and get more of those points exactly if you wanted to see them on a graph, but yeah, this is fine. Okay, solve the equations. I'll do a couple, and the rest you should know how to do this. We've done this a lot. It's just basically combining like terms and then add or subtract to get our variable. So the first two are pretty much the same. So we have x plus a number equals another number. We're just going to subtract whatever number is on the x side. Subtract that on both sides. And then that's our solution. So we get x x equals 12. So 90 minus 78 is 12. So that's it. The next one, basically the same, except we're just subtracting 44. The next one, we need to combine those two first. So I'm going to do that in this next step. So 3x plus 30 equals 180. So pretty much the same. We just have an extra step. Subtract 30 on both sides, so that makes it 0. That leaves us with 3x equals 150. And then we have one more step, which is our division. Divide by 3 on both sides. So that's a 1. And then 150 divided by 3 is 50. Okay, the next one, it looks like it's a lot, but we're just combining these. So just add those together. So we have 45 plus 45 plus 135. So what is that? That's 90 plus 135, or 215. So just check your work, though. Make sure. Check my work. You have a calculator. You have a phone. You can check to make sure. And this is incorrect. This is actually 225 equals 360. Okay, and then it's just like the first one. Subtract 225 on both sides, and you're done. Okay, same with this. Subtract 112, subtract 36. All right, and then the next one is pretty much like the third one we did. So this would be... Okay, and then we're going to add 3, because we want that to be a 0. So we have to add 3, do the opposite of the operation that's been done. So we get 7x equals 21. And then we divide by 7, and we get 3 as our answer. That makes a 1, so we get x equals 3. All right, so the last two, we have parentheses, which means we need to use the distributive property and possibly combine like terms. So I'm going to do the last one. So we have 8 times x, which is 8x, and then 8 times negative 5, which is negative 40, then plus 7x equals 65. So we have two terms that we can combine. So the 8x and the 7x, that makes 15x minus 40 equals 65. Okay, so now it's just like some of the other ones. Add 40 on both sides. That becomes 0, which is our goal. We don't want that number on the same side as the x anymore. We get 15x equals 105. So then we just have to divide both sides by 15 to get our final answer. Okay, so x equals 7. All right, and that's it for that one. Okay, so our last part, we have another word description for an equation. So we need to convert this into an actual equation. Being careful, so let's read this a couple times. 22 less than 3 times a number is negative 70. So is means equals negative 70. Okay, so 22 less than 3 times a number. So 3 times a number, and then 22 less than that. So 3x minus 22 equals negative 70. Okay, so looking on the side with the x, we have this minus 22. We're going to add 22 to both sides. So we get 3x equals, so we have negative 70, and then we're going to add 22, so we get negative 48. Okay, and then our last step, divide by 3. And we get, so that becomes a 1, so 1x, x equals negative 16. Okay, so x equals negative 16. All right, and I'm going to leave the rest for you. Graph, same as we did before. And that is all for day 8.